Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
An unbelievable tale of lies and foul play.
A father's murder.
His then-wife murdered him. Then she tricked everyone into believing he was still alive.
A wife's deception.
My son was receiving emails that he thought were coming from his father.
A son's guilt.
I'm not sure if I could have stopped it, but at least I could have tried.
Grief is not a mental illness. To get your head up and realize there's work left to be done here. Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. Well, today is very important because we are dealing with an unsolved murder and the plot to cover it up. Now, an unbelievable tale of lies, deception, and foul play that has left one family just reeling with unanswered questions. You'll understand when you see this.
It's a murder mystery with many twists and turns. A man's remains found on a golf course. His ex-wife, the prime suspect.
Right now, investigators are working two scenes, a storage facility and a golf course.
The golf course isn't where police initially believed those remains were stored.
Shannon Ivey's remains were first placed in the storage unit, and then those remains were moved by someone to a golf course nearby.
Through the course of our investigation, led us to believe that those remains had once been at the Spencer Mini storage.
Police are still working to figure out how Shannon Ivey was killed and who took his remains to a storage unit and then transported it to a golf course.
Well, police say Shannon was murdered sometime between January and July of 2016 after returning home from working abroad. But his body was not found until January 10th of 2018. So how did nobody realize that Shannon was dead for at least 18 months? Well, Shannon's family believe not only did his then-wife Tony murder him, but then she tricked everyone into believing he was still alive. Melanie says her son Lance hasn't been the same since.
My ex-husband, Shannon, worked overseas off the coast of Australia and Papua New Guinea. My son, Lance, was receiving emails for approximately 2 years, emails that he thought were coming from his father. When his stepmom, Tony, died, the emails suddenly stopped. I was suspicious of the emails and felt like she was the one that wrote them. Tony is a good person, was a good wife, and is an honest person. You can trust her. You know, that just didn't sit right. Tony died of an apparent heart attack.
LaPorte police are accusing Ivey's ex-wife, Tony Ivey Stinnett, of killing him.
I believe Tony shot Shannon in the back of the head, put him in her storage facility, and left him there for 2 years. As soon as they found the body, we knew the emails were fake, that there was foul play involved. The police, they had already confiscated her computer, and they found evidence of the emails that she sent. I never in a million years would have thought she was trying to pretend he was still alive. Lance is traumatized by his father's murder. He was given an honorable discharge because they knew the behavior he was exhibiting was not his normal behavior. He was distraught, very emotional, and had a hard time with ship life at that point. Lance is having a really hard time moving on. He is very withdrawn. Lance is using video games as an escape, almost like a drug, to not have to deal with his grief. Do you feel like I am pushing you to get over this?
It's just really hard to get past it.
Lance has made it his mission and his full-time job to find out exactly what happened. There's so much noise going on in his head. I'm hoping that he can just put this tragedy behind him and move on with his life.
Well, Lance's Aunt Heather says she is haunted by the image of her brother lying dead for all of those months in a cold, dark storage unit. She says she will not stop obsessing about it until she gets answers.
I feel haunted by my brother's death. It took forever for me to get a hold of someone at the police office. The police investigation was very strange. Tony was always considered the prime suspect in the investigation, but because she had already died, she couldn't be prosecuted or tried. I did a lot of investigation on my own with the help of my family. I called neighbors. The next door neighbor told us there was a pod and a dumpster that had been sitting in the driveway for months. I began reading through the 50-page long autopsy report. He must have been in bed asleep when he was shot. I believe Tony murdered my brother, lied to all of us about it, and then stole my brother's inheritance. We figured out that all of these signatures were all forged. It was all done by Tony. I contacted the notary for the power of attorney form, and she said that she never recalled ever notarizing anything for Shannon or Tony. Tony had power of attorney for my brother, and that was her golden ticket to get away with murder.
Okay, well, first, let me say to you both, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I mean, this is terrible. You've lost your brother, and I know that he was your ex-husband, this is the father of your son, and I know this is terrible for both of you. Now, you believe that she was not in this alone, correct?
Correct. True. Yes.
Why do you think that?
She was only like 5'2". She had gone through multiple surgeries.
Double knee replacement, right?
Yes. There was no way that she could have, and also the police felt the same way too, that there was no way that she could have done this, wrapped his body and lifted it and moved it into a car all by herself.
He was over 6 feet tall, too.
Right, and 240 pounds, right?
Right.
Do you have any theory as to why she would do this?
I think that, you know, when people work overseas, they make really good money. So my theory is that she shot him to be able to take all the money that he had out of the bank.
And you believe that he was shot in his sleep?
Yeah, that's my theory. I think that after reading the autopsy report, he was just wearing a T-shirt, his underwear, and socks. It was, they believe in January, we all kind of believe sometime in January of 2016, because of the angle that he was shot, it seems that, you know, he must have been lying down and dressed like maybe he was just, you know, passed out, falling asleep, and he was wrapped in blankets and towels and just maybe, and whatever was nearby.
Okay, and how was she able to get away with this for as long as she did? Because if the theory is, and we'll look at a timeline in a minute, but if the theory is that he was likely killed in January and not discovered for 18 months, so how did she keep this a secret for 18 months?
Well, Shannon worked out of the country, and he would be gone for maybe 2 months at a time, sometimes longer, and then he would come home for maybe 4 weeks, and Lance would see him, my son would see him during that time that he was home. Right. And then he got, he started getting emails saying that he had met somebody over there, and he wasn't interested in his wife anymore. He had made a life over there. And finally, Lance got an email in August of that same year saying, I'm not coming home at all. Like, basically, good luck with your life. And that devastated him.
You think she was writing, pretending to be him, and this was a normal way for Shannon to communicate. So that didn't set off any bells.
Well, I was suspicious of the way, the voice, you know, there was kind of a voice there in the emails, and I was suspicious of that. And I expressed my suspicion to my son and told him, you know, I don't think, you know, your dad's writing these emails. Let's
look at these emails, comparison-wise. Before January 26th, the emails came from Shannon.Ivy at, and I'm blanking this out, oil.com. Okay? Now, after July 16, the emails were ivyshannon at ymail.com. Okay, so the address changes. Okay, before January, it's always a company signature logo. After July, no company signature logo. Before January, never CCs anyone. After July, there are 3 emails that are CCing Tony's email. Before January, never once references Tony in an email. After July, all but 1 emails refer to Tony as a good person, trust her, loves you. So she's validating herself after that. Before January, the emails are short. The longest was 42 words, 5 lines. After July, the emails get longer. The longest was 602 words and 30 lines. Completely different.
Right.
Before January, there would be multiple explanation points or question marks, i.e., love you, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. After July, none. Not like that. So people have different characteristics to the way they write, and those just disappeared. The nuances that weren't picked up by someone mimicking the other. So the differences between before and after were substantial.
One of the very first emails that he received that he thought was from his dad that wasn't, said that he had been fired from his job. And so that kind of explained the email address changing, obviously. But, you know, I told Lance, I said, I really feel like your stepmom's writing these, because she kept praising herself, you know. But he was adamant that it wasn't, you know, it was his dad. He was so devastated. He wasn't going to come back. He felt abandoned. And I thought, well, maybe I'm being paranoid, but I thought maybe she just wants to be controlled, because she was kind of a control freak. And I thought maybe she just wants to control the situation, control conversations that Shannon has with his family and stuff like that, you know, so.
The point is, you believe the way she kept this going was she took over his identity and started communicating as him and bought time. Now, next, according to police, Lance's father was left to partially mummify in a storage unit after being murdered during a domestic dispute with his then-wife, Tony. Now, Lance blames himself for not being there to save him. We're going to meet him after the break.
My stepmom, Tony, pretended to be my dad through email, and it was honestly believable. During this time, there were a few times I had actually talked to Tony. It seemed like she was being supportive, even though she had already murdered my dad.
Lance is unable to get past the horrific murder of his father. He's easily angered, he has trust issues, and he's very paranoid about people around him. His personality is completely different. He had a lot of friends, but this is all he talks about, and he's pushed a lot of his friends away. It consumes every thought. I have recently asked him, you know, are we ever going to be able to have a normal conversation?
When 48-year-old Shannon's body was found wrapped in a rug in the back of a pickup truck, his son Lance's world obviously came apart. Now, Lance says he is riddled with guilt and believes the choice he made was the literal nail in his father's coffin. Let's hear why he says that.
I'm still dealing with a lot of the shock of losing my father. For almost 2 years, my stepmom, Tony, pretended to be my dad through email, and it was honestly believable. I received at least 20 emails during that time. She would ask me how my day was going or just random things about my life, and Dad would do the same, so I wouldn't really suspect anything of that. One of the emails that I received said that he wasn't sure if he was ever going to be coming back.
I just kept telling Lance, I just really don't think he wrote this. I cheated with a woman in Australia. I have made a life with her. I will be gone for quite a while. And I couldn't convince him, and he just said, no, Mom, he wrote it.
I think because Dad would always sign his emails with that at the very end, just, you know, love Dad. I mean, emailing was definitely normal behavior, but as far as him saying that he wasn't coming back, I really wish that I would have looked harder at that at the time.
I think that's a lot of the reason why Lance blames himself. Shannon would have already been dead at that point, but you can't explain that to Lance. He feels so guilty about believing those emails came from his dad.
I'm still confused at when she took over, because some emails, they sounded so much like him. During this time, there were a few times I had actually talked to Tony, and she actually showed up at my graduation of boot camp. It seemed like she was being supportive, even though she had already murdered my dad. I've been pretty trapped recently trying to figure out everything and why Tony would do what she did.
Every day he wakes up with maybe a newfound guilt as to how he could have prevented his dad's death. Lance does blame himself for his father's murder.
Instead of going to live with him, I ended up going into the Navy, and I'm not sure if I could have stopped it, but at least I could have tried.
Well, Lance, I'm glad you're here, because I think this is worthy of our talking about. And First, I have to say, as I said to your mother and your aunt, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
As a father of two boys, I can't imagine what it would be like for them if they lost their dad in this way. And I can imagine it's just been devastating for you. But I want to talk to you about what you're doing about that, and also what you're not doing about that. Because I'll just tell you straight up, I'm not here to tell you to get over this and move on. But I think there are some things you're doing that aren't constructive, and I think you owe your dad a different approach to this than what you're doing. So we'll talk about that in a minute. You got duped here, right?
Right.
But everybody got duped here.
I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things that's hard to get over, is the fact that I wasn't around enough to know the difference.
Have you ever thought about why evil, sociopathic, psychopathic people get away with the things they do?
Probably blinded by love or something.
Well, in a sense, they get away with this stuff because normal, healthy people cannot even conceive of doing what they do. All signs point to the fact that she shot this man in the head and killed him, hid his body, stole his money, forged documents, did all of this stuff, and nobody saw this was happening because you are much too well to even conceive of doing something like that. That's just not part of who you are, so you can't recognize that trait in somebody else because we don't have that. So we have nothing to compare that to. That's how they get that over on normal, healthy people. Do you see what I'm saying?
I absolutely see what you're saying.
You're not that dark. You can't get that dark. You can't get that sick.
No.
And so therefore, you're vulnerable to those sort of people. It's not a weakness in you. It's actually a strength. I'm going to talk about what that does mean about where you can go now and what you're doing that I think is getting in your way. Now, Heather and Melanie believe not only did Tony murder Shannon and trick the family into believing he was alive, she also forged Shannon's signature to steal his inheritance. We'll talk about that after the break. I agree with you that there is investigation left to be done. There were very likely forgeries here. Somebody else is involved, and they need to be held to account.
Heather, Shannon's sister, has been like a detective of sorts and has been really working on this case on her own and has tried to find out more information. I hadn't spoken to her in a long time, but once all of this happened, we got closer and started trying to help each other. How could she help Lance, or how could they help each other get through this? They're both struggling and are having such a hard time, and I wish there was more I could do to help them.
Well, the police have said there is nothing left to investigate in Shannon Ivey's murder because the primary suspect, Tony Ivey, has passed away. But that hasn't been good enough for Shannon's family, who have been turning over every rock to get to the truth. Let me just say, I agree with you that there is investigation left to be done here. Yeah. The fact that she has passed, she didn't load that body by herself. I agree with you 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else is involved here, and they need to be held to account, and they could also answer some questions. There were very likely forgeries here, correct?
Yes.
I want to take a look at something here. Let's put up the signatures that we've looked at here. Okay, I have two specimens right here. This is Shannon's known signature. This is his actual signature here. We know this. This is a verified signature of his. And then this is Tony's known signature. This is a verified signature of hers. Okay, now this is supposedly Shannon giving Tony power of attorney. Now, in order to do that, he had to sign a document giving her power of attorney to conduct his business matters. And so this is him supposedly signing Shannon Ivey. Okay, this is his real signature, and this is the signature that he supposedly signed. Now, that doesn't even remotely look like his signature, but, and look, I'm not a graphologist expert here, but I've worked with a lot of them over the years in trial, and I can tell you there are points that you look at, and if you look here at how he does his eye and look at how she does her eye with a slant here and something below the line, and here she does it with a slant here and something below the line. You come over here where she signs the divorce papers, and by the way, this is also drawn, not written. You can see that by where they stop the pen. Here, 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 because they're drawing, and when they stop, the ink soaks into the pad instead of moving constantly. So this is drawn, not signed, and it doesn't look anything like his signature there, but has definite consistencies with her signature down below. So I think you're exactly right. There were forgeries here. And at this point, I have no doubt that he probably was deceased. Okay, now let's look at the timeline here, because Lance, I want you to take a real hard look at this. Now, the last time you spoke to your father was in November of 15, correct?
Right.
Okay, now according to the police, he passes between January and July. Now that's a big window, right?
Right.
But we do know that according to the police in the autopsy, the last known that he was alive, that they can verify, because he used his passport on the 3rd. Okay, so there's good evidence that he was alive on the 3rd. Then from January to August, according to you, there's normal email communication with your father once a month, and you believe that he was still out of the country. In April, which is during this time here, Tony says Shannon met a new woman, isn't coming home, and wants a divorce. That suggests to me that he definitely is deceased at that point, because she has to explain why he's not coming home.
Right.
Right.
Then May, he gives her power of attorney. Then they file for divorce. Then he emails you that he's never coming home.
Right.
This is bye, not ever coming home. This is in August. And then, according to you, there are 20 emails between July 16 and July 17. So during that year, those emails were very likely from her.
Yeah.
We know that
without
now.
a doubt.
Yes.
Okay. And then in November of 16, you go to the Navy.
Yes,
You
sir.
say, if I hadn't done that, then, you know, maybe he'd be alive today. But the fact of the matter is, she probably took his life way back here.
Right.
I mean, I hate to mess up your theory, but
I don't know. I look at it as of when I made the decision, I guess, instead of when I actually shipped off.
I understand, because you were training and ready to go to the Navy, but that's a pretty narcissistic view of things to think, you know, if I had been present, I could have changed the course of events. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not that powerful. But you do have some power now that you're not using. And that's what I want you to harness at this point. That's why I'm telling you, it's not time to get over this, it's time to do something about it. Next, Lance says he is convinced that he could have prevented his father from being murdered. I disagree. We're going to talk about what I think he can do after the break.
Lance is coming up with theories that don't entirely make sense.
He has a memory of his dad putting a gun to the back of his head while he was sleeping. That sounds like a nightmare. It seems like every day Lance has a different theory as to why his dad died, why Tony killed him. Lance seems to think that Tony decided to kill Shannon because Lance went in the Navy.
Lance is coming up with theories that don't entirely make sense. He believed that there was a bet between my brother Shannon and Tony, that he was asked to choose between 3 different characters, a songwriter, a prophet, or a comedian. Each character represented the death of one or another or both.
He has a memory of his dad putting a gun to the back of his head while he was sleeping. That sounds like a nightmare to me. But for him to be unsure scares me.
Well, Melanie says not a day goes by that Lance doesn't conjure up some type of way to really try to make sense out of nonsense. Put on your police investigative hat for a minute, and using the principle of parsimony, Occam's razor, looking at the most likely set of events, what do you think's most likely to have happened here?
It seems like they manipulated me a lot. And whenever it came to, I don't know, I was really young, which is why it feels like a dream a lot of the time, that they did put a gun up to the back of my head whenever I was little.
How does someone putting a gun to your head when you were a child relate to your father being shot now?
I think maybe they kept doing it, and that's why I didn't spend so much time over there as I got older.
You think you were alienated by that?
I think eventually it started to really scare me.
That resulted in what?
That resulted in my dad's death, who I think cared the most about me. And it's hard to get over that because of all of the good memories that I have with him. So it hurts a lot to look back at that and still remember him being this fun-loving, funny guy that would do anything for his kids.
If that was happening, or you believe that was happening, either one, and you rushed over there like, hey, I'm back, put a gun to my head again, there'd be something wrong with you. You would naturally avoid that situation and circumstance. And trust me, if there is an explanation that explains this, and like I say, I've been doing this for 45 years, this boils down to greed. There's nothing more exotic than that. And I hate that, but isn't that the most likely circumstance here?
I think so.
Because isn't that exactly what happened after it happened?
That's
She then
exactly what
started
happened.
exercising power of attorney, getting divorced, liquidating assets, selling off cars, all of that. We don't have to wonder why she did it. We see why she did it. Now, Melanie says her son won't get a job, refuses to socialize, has zero ambition or direction. He's all about focusing on his father's murder or escaping into video games to distract himself, no doubt. Is that the most efficient way to go about what he really wants to do? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Lance is using video games to live in this fantasy world.
Video games was basically the only way I knew how to avoid thinking about my dad and how to stop a lot of the pain.
We never liked him playing a lot of video games. We felt like that was kind of hindering his ability to be to work on time and do well in school. We were shutting off the Wi-Fi and making it really difficult for him to play video games.
I ended up moving out because my mom wouldn't let me play video games. My mom doesn't understand how video games work. They're helpful to escape. I would feel a lot better after playing the games. Sometimes I just want to play video games and be left alone.
You know, of course, what you want is very healthy. You want him to be as high functioning and productive in his life as he possibly can be. I totally get that. What he wants is answers. What you want are answers in this. I totally get that too. Well, joining us now is Mike Baer. Now, Mike is a life coach who is respected by his clients. He's helped them get and keep their lives on track. He is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Best Self, Be You, Only Better. I've asked Mike to join because I want him to do some things when we finish here as well, and to weigh in on what you and I have talked about here. And before you do that, Mike, what I'm saying to you is, remember what I said in the beginning, I'm not telling you to move on. What I'm saying is you're not being very efficient at what you're doing right now. And Coach Mike does just that. He coaches people to be their best self, to function at the highest level they can day to day. And when I talk about coaching here, there is no presumption of mental illness. Grief is not a mental illness. Grief is not depression. Grief is something that is normal to do when you lose someone. But it is a process, which means you should be moving through that process at your own pace, in your own way. And everybody does it different. And what grief is not, let me be clear, grief is not psychosis. It is not necessarily the beginning of a long-term clinical depression. It is not a particular defect to experience, whether 2 weeks or even 2 years later, continued feelings of anger, sadness, and an array of other emotions. Grief is not a pain that will likely stay the same for the rest of your life. It's not a punishment from God or the devil. Loss doesn't have to be just an end. It can also be a beginning of a different way of relating to somebody. Now, Coach Mike, what are you observing here?
The good news in all of this is coming here, like Dr. Phil said, and he's done thousands of these, that the case isn't over. But I think we need to get a new pair of glasses, because the current pain that you have is going towards video games, escaping, instead of your own personal power.
Right.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And so what we want to do is we want you to get your power back, not only for yourself, but also for justice for your father, right?
Right.
I mean, how much do you dislike Tony?
I mean, I don't hate her. I feel like...
Well, I hate her, and I don't even know her. But we can agree that at this point, the event that happened has set you up in such a way where you're not living to your potential.
Right.
You're not being your best self. And so what we would do is we would have accountability with you, a check-in in the morning, coaching sessions, goal setting, so that not only are you also working on being your best self, but we're also giving you the best chance of getting justice for your father and for your family.
Well, Lance believes that if he hadn't maybe chosen to go to the Navy, and really it's what led up to that decision, which was not moving in with his father and training to go into the Navy instead, that left space for his father to be killed. Now, Melanie says that there's no way Lance could have prevented Shannon's brutal murder. I completely agree. What could have happened did. The question is, what to do about it now? You know, here's the thing. She's controlling you. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's got control here because she's done this, and she's devastated his life, of course, and the two of you as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, she is controlling you from the grave.
I know.
At this point, if you're so upset and you're avoiding this so much that you're spending 6 hours a day playing video games, if you're going to spend 6 hours, spend 6 hours constructively pursuing the resolution of this crime. You don't have time to be playing 6 hours of video games. You need to get your head up and realize there's work left to be done here. And do it. I don't think you're obsessed with this. I think you're still looking for answers. You two deserve answers.
I agree.
You deserve answers, and you do that by getting your head up and getting out and being productive. You do it by saying, look, I got to get back in my life, get involved here, and start pushing buttons, asking questions, doing things like being here. You're putting a bright light on over this case right now.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, we got a lot of people watching this in Harris County right now. And this is going to bring a lot of attention to this. And I want that too, and I want you to be rationally involved in this. You don't need all these theories, and you don't need to be hiding in video games. You need to get up, get out there, get involved in your life and the world, and let's get this thing solved.
Right.
Let's get the answers you deserve. And that's what deserves to happen here. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
I know whenever it comes to me playing video games and stuff, that's one of the biggest things I'm trying to let go of. You know, I've started to go work out with one of my best friends the past couple weeks, and, you know, it helps in those instances whenever, you know, the next day I feel a lot better and whatnot. But the hardest thing is trying to let go of the few friends I have left that are on my Xbox or PC or whatnot.
Oh, we're going to help you with that.
So,
all right, next. So what's to be done here? I'm going to give you my thoughts very specifically after the break. You need to get up and get your motor running so you can be active cognitively, so you can be thinking, so you can be efficient, and that's going to help you help us to get this thing resolved, get this thing solved. And to do that, you can't afford to be doing some of the things you're doing. What happened here is somebody got greedy and they took your father's life for money. And not everybody involved has been held to account. And that needs to happen. And you don't need to let the person that did this have control of your life, but you need help getting it back on track, right?
yes, sir.
And I'm so happy that you're agreeable, because like Dr. Phil said, when you're in pain and it's unresolved, it's really confusing. So to have a thinking partner every day to navigate with you, who is not attached to your family, who's completely independent, we're going to do this, and hopefully we come back to the show and we have the case and have some justice solved. That would be the goal.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and look, there's nothing that's going to bring back your brother. Nothing's going to bring back your father. But you can find some peace in knowing that you've done everything you can do to get the answers and make sure everybody involved was held to account here. And know that, you know, when you speak to him in the quiet times, you can look him in the spiritual eye and say, we did everything we could, and we did it well. And that will bring you peace, I promise. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, Mom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Coach Mike Baer. For more information about today's show, log on to drphil.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you're in Harris County and you want to mention this to the Harris County law enforcement that you're interested in, that would be okay too. Speaking of Facebook, you can check out my super fan Denise's comment. She wrote, "Love watching your show. My patience does run thin with some of your guests." Smiley face. Well, Denise, believe me, if you could see the bubble over my head sometimes, you would, well, you probably wouldn't be surprised. But when I have a great guest like Lance here, well, I have all the patience in the world. I read all of your comments on Facebook and Twitter, so keep them coming. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.